It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello, and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today, in response to a sort of a throwaway line from our last Q&A episode, we're going to give relationship advice.
Amazingly.
Yes, and we're also going to talk about the latest Hugo drama, if we have time at the end. And by we, I mean Alexis, because I don't know anything about it. So, let's just get right into it. I think we should probably take turns reading these out.
All right, I'll read out the first one.
Okay, go for it.
Hey guys, I heard you're doing relationship advice now, and I wanted to know if you have any advice about the problems I've been having lately. So I, 14F, have a really cool boyfriend, 14F, who's super pretty and good at basketball, but recently she's been spending a lot of time with this weird girl who I've heard some pretty bad things about. The weird girl used to date the vice president of the student council, who I kind of have a crush on, and apparently she broke his heart. Now she's always with my boyfriend, and for some reason they even got assigned to live together in this creepy old dorm that's really far away from mine. Also, the girl caused a big explosion that made her switch bodies with my boyfriend for a while, which was weird. Anyway, my boyfriend has been kind of distant lately, and I'm not sure what to do about it. I've tried tackle hugging her harder, but she doesn't seem to like it as much as she used to. Do you have any advice about how I can win her back before something bad happens with the weird girl? Thanks!
Well, thank you for writing in. So, this sounds to me like your friend is getting pulled into, like, weird girl circles. And if you want her back, you should try to redirect her attention to something more normal. Like, for example, if there's like an older adult male authority figure around, try setting them up together.
What?
Because that's, I think, the most normal thing that you can do.
Don't do that. Don't listen to Isaac. Don't listen to Isaac, regardless of whether, you think that this might be a reference to something. Do not do that.
Well, what should she do then?
I mean, so obviously talk about your feelings. First of all, does this other person know that she's your boyfriend? Because if she doesn't, you might want to have a talk about that. Also, I like that apparently the youth these days are calling it tackle hugging instead of glomping. I feel like this says good things about how we've moved on as a culture.
Yes. Well, glomping is outlawed at cons, but I don't know if tackle hugging is or not.
That's good. Good job, cons. So I think, but setting all of this stuff aside, including the body switching, which is definitely weird, I agree. If somebody's being distant, if your friend or boyfriend is being distant from you, talk with them about it. And if they pretend that nothing is going on, probably it just means that you guys are growing apart and you should broaden your friend circle.
Yes, I agree. Why not take a swipe at that student council vice president that you were talking about?
Or maybe you could avoid all of these people entirely because they sound kind of weird and toxic. And, I am sure there's some boy who has a crush on you or girl who has a crush on you in your class.
All right, I think we've disposed of that. Okay, so we got some asks that seem to me to be in character. Just having, we don't have to maintain that for the whole episode, I don't think.
Well, I read this one. I had to read that one because one time in college you said that I sounded like Wakapa, which I was not thrilled by.
I'm nonplussed by it now, to be honest.
I have no idea what was going on in your head.
No, you don't speak Japanese all the time, for one thing. Didn't you spoke more Japanese all the time then, but still not all the time. All right, on to our next question, which is not a part of any fictional universe as far as I can tell. Any advice on picking up other lesbians in small towns? Alexis, you probably have more experience with this than I do.
Well, I mean, you could try attempting to write fan fiction in lieu of going to therapy and hoping one of your commenters reads the fan fiction and decides that you seem like the sort of person that she might want to marry. Strike up a friendship in the AO3 comments. Turn that into a actual conversation over WhatsApp, and then find out she was actually your former rabbi's daughter. That's what worked for me. I cannot promise it's reproducible. I can only think of one other time where something similar has happened. But the real thing is look online, and learn how to drive if you don't already.
Yeah, I find that if you're in a small town, you probably know all the other lesbians in the small town already.
I mean, it depends on how you're defining a small town.
Yes,
Like if it's a college town,
perhaps not, but you may wish to cast your net wider, as Alexis said, and that doesn't necessarily have to be through dating apps, which are
oh yeah, sorry.
awful.
When I said online, I did not mean through dating apps. I meant through whatever your like. Seriously, look through whatever your online interest communities are, especially if it's somewhere where queer people hang out, and just meet people and make friends, and
you might be able to meet somebody who's willing to drive to your small town. You never know.
Right. One of you will probably have to move. That is just the downside of being gay in a small town. To be fair, I do know some people who have met, I know some lesbians who have met their partners through the dating apps around here. And it really helps if you can drive to their small town and they can drive to yours.
Mm-hmm. I might, if you really are looking for a hookup, around town, you don't want to go through all that. Have you tried checking out the volunteer fire department? If there are any women who are volunteer firefighters, they're probably lesbians.
Yes, I will note, though, as somebody who, is still adjusting in some ways to life in a small town, the downside of just having hookups in a small town is you can never get away from everyone else in a small town.
This is true. And if, for example, you date somebody at the volunteer fire department and then your house catches on fire, you're going to have a...
It's going to be real awkward.
Right. Or alternately, if you're so inclined, you could join the volunteer fire department. Or if there's any like sword fighting stuff nearby, any fencing classes or anything like that, you could try that too.
Right. So, either develop a hobby that will bring you close to lesbians nearby, or look for other lesbians online in your hobby who you can, befriend and eventually U-Haul with.
Excellent.
Do you want to read this one also, because it's very long?
I read a few of these questions out too quickly. It's a habit I've had since childhood, bear with me. Do you have any advice for someone who desires love but can't figure out how to give or receive it properly? Yes, I do. Stay tuned. I am a person who has always felt out of the loop socially and struggled to meet what Western culture considers normal social milestones. Relatable. With a lot of effort, I've become someone who most people find very likable and find easy to get first, second, and third dates. But after the initial excitement of the first several dates wears off, I find I have no idea what I want or what I'm doing or how I should be behaving. I start to get very, very anxious and eventually repulsed by being with the person. Sex is also a big problem for me. I'm amenable in theory, but in practice, I've found most forms of touching overly intense and confusing. The answer is autism. I've tried talking it out.
It's like, this is very relatable.
Although I struggle with communicating my feelings, sitting with discomfort, and growing slow with physical intimacy with rather mixed results. So far, every relationship ends with me feeling confused and guilty and breaking off the person within a few months. This pattern of behavior has unfortunately resulted in me hurting a lot of people's feelings despite my best efforts. It's awful because I know that my difficulty engaging physically and emotionally is hurting them, but I don't know how to fix it, which makes me want to get out of their life even more. I now find myself in the position where the end of my 20s is not that far away, and I've still never been in a serious romantic relationship. I used to fill the void with high achievement in academics and career, but recently burned out hard and fell into a very bad depression, which has forced me to figure out, to realize how unsustainable my life is. There's more than one thing I need to figure out, but my inability to maintain relationships is close to the top. After my last experience dating not too long ago, I'm reluctant to try to pursue another relationship until I can, quote unquote, fix myself. This is obviously problematic phrasing, but it's the best way to describe how I feel, or at least figure out what my needs are and how to communicate. This is much easier said than done. It's a mortifying problem to admit. Do you, powerful podcasters that you are, have any advice? So as you may have gleaned from our interjections, we relate.
Yes. So I find a therapist who specializes in ADHD and autism.
Yes, I'm not trying to diagnose you over the course of a paragraph, but
these are issues that lots of people who are neurodivergent have also struggled with. So even if that's not a diagnosis that ends up fitting with you very well, that a therapist who specializes in those issues and takes a very pro neurodiversity approach, definitely find one who's really focused on find one who works on things like unmasking, will be a good person for helping you figure this stuff out, I think.
Yes, when you have figured out how to operate in society through, learned behavior and mimesis, those first 3 dates are relatively easy to navigate because you're in well scripted areas.
Yep.
You know how to behave during that part. But the problem with going further than that is that you have to delve into how you feel. And one of the things about this particular rainbow of neurodiversity is that it can be very difficult to figure out how we feel, even for us.
Yeah, especially if you've grown up in an environment where you've been pressured to mask and to be a high achiever in academics and career and to behave as expected.
Yeah. And you also you're trying to figure out what love is and what this sort of intimacy is based on all of these narratives that you might have absorbed that might not actually resemble what you want or what you feel in this sort of situation. So
don't be mortified because this is actually real common.
This happens to a lot of us. Please don't, you're not alone in this by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that you're right in that probably the right thing to do right now is to focus on yourself through therapy.
Yes, though I would say you don't have to wait until you're fixed before you want to try dating.
You'll never be fixed.
You'll never be fixed. I think, you can try. It sounds like you've had, mixed results isn't uniformly bad results. I think so long as you're mostly staying within your comfort zone, trying things out is okay. You don't have to, be in perfect working order or whatever to go out on dates with people and to say things like, hey, I have a lot of complicated feelings on physical intimacy. I would really appreciate it if I go slow. I would also recommend looking for people who are either neurodivergent themselves or, better yet, who kind of have a thing, who have a dating pattern of dating people with autism and or ADHD.
who are familiar with these things from having experienced them multiple times oneself. Yes. And also, ace arrow is a thing. You might decide that you don't want to have sex, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And you might be somebody who's you might be somewhere also on the ace spectrum where, because you say that you find sex appealing, or at least okay in theory, and so you might find there's certain things that you do end up liking or not liking, and however they line up or don't line up with conventional society ideas of what sex is supposed to look like. So long as you and your partner are into it, it doesn't really matter. And there's plenty of other people on, the ace spectrum who will be easily able to meet you where you are eventually, once you've gotten some of your shit thought through.
Yes. And actually, to tie this back to the previous question, think about looking on the internet for people who have similar interests and experiences that you do, rather than people in your immediate circle, because unfortunately we are often geographically spread out, those of us with the correct or with the helpful experience in these matters. So
and I think also instead of going, I'm going to go on dates and try to find a partner, also just try to build stronger social bonds with people who might be in the demographic of your preferred partner, because even if none of them, even if you don't end up clicking with any of them, that will bring you into a sphere where you're meeting more people. And also again, because we're both getting a little bit of an ace spectrum vibe, you might be the sort of person who needs to actually already have some emotional intimacy with somebody before you feel comfortable with physical intimacy.
True. I could probably keep talking about this forever.
Right.
I want to conclude it, but I'm the note that I want to conclude it on for me, and go ahead after I'm done. Is one part of this is getting over that being mortified part, because you may be conditioned to police the behavior that embarrasses you in yourself in others also. And that may get in the way of forming relationships with people with whom you might actually be better compatible. So
that's really good advice, and I think my concluding note is very similar, which is try to get over your sense of mortification and shame, and you seem like you really feel like a failure in some ways, and sounds like you're doing fine. Isaac and I didn't meet our partners until we were in our very late 30s, and if you've got that mortification, not only what Isaac said, but also that's going to really add to your anxiety, because you're going to feel like you can't show them your real self because you're embarrassed about your real self. And then, you're going to self-sabotage and the relationship is going to go down in flames.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. Would you like to read the next one?
Sure. Dear Wizards versus Lesbians, I met this woman at my new job. She's so competent. I'd be lost without her. She's beautiful and smart, and she thinks I'm fantastic. But I worry that she's only attracted to me because she fetishizes foreigners. I know she always means well, and she's made a number of significant sacrifices for my sake, so I don't mean to be ungrateful. But even though she thinks my differences are cool and attractive, it's like some part of her thinks that obviously I'd want to be just like her in her culture. Still, we work together so well in so many different contexts, and I could easily find myself loving her. What should I do?
I think we may have gotten more than one question from this specific person. Yes,
from the specific character, not
from the specific character. Yes,
but you know what?
Yes.
I find this relatable as somebody who was a lot of bi-curious Chinese women's figuring out person.
And how did that make you feel, Alexa?
Well, mostly disappointed when it didn't pan out. No, actually, it was really uncomfortable. But also, I hope that this ended up being useful for them in some way. And I think it's funny, in practice, like in theory, I'm like, it doesn't matter if the person kind of fetishizes foreigners, because, so long as you guys actually have mutual respect and can, and have enough to build a relationship on, it doesn't matter. But there is also this moment when you realize that the person who's into you is into you because you're exotic and weird to them. I feel slightly bad about this. I ghosted a girl I'd been on some dates with in Beijing because suddenly she made it clear that she was into me because I was a foreigner, and in a sort of fetishizey way, as opposed to just
sure.
Oh, it's so cool to make a friend who's from a different culture, and just that threw a bucket of cold water over the entire thing. So it's actually a dilemma. I can only sort of suggest, and this is also something that we're going to repeat over and over again, but the more open you can be about this and the more openly you can discuss this, the better off it's going to be. And the sooner that you start talking about this, the better off you're going to be. Yeah.
Because you don't want to build something and then have it explode because there's this, unspoken thing hanging over everything that will eventually come out.
Yeah. And try to figure out, does this person fetishize foreigners? Or does this person have a type and their type happens to be foreigners?
Yes, this is that's a really neat sort of blurry line distinction right there, and the what matters is how you feel about it.
Yep.
Yeah. Like look at their dating history, and maybe see what kind of terms they're on with their exes, Yeah,
that's a big one. Like, even if, they've only ever dated foreigners or they've mostly dated foreigners, if they're on good terms with all of them, that suggests that, they weren't treating them like some sort of weird token.
To slightly spin off from this, I believe that the ethical chaser exists, but if they refer to themselves as such, they probably aren't one.
Yes. Right, exactly.
All right, next up. I don't know if this is the kind of life problem you're going for, but it's tangentially related to dating. Trying to move out as a young adult with an overprotective mother who's going to hate the idea, but lacking the know-how to start making steps toward moving out without support. Getting too comfortable in the cozy cage of childhood. I still like living with my family a lot of times. I know I'll be lonely if I move out, but that feels like part of the stagnation. Do you guys have any advice for building up your own confidence in your independence enough to push against someone else's disdain for the idea? Am I stunting myself by not fighting harder to leave even if I know I'll miss it?
Oh, honey.
I wish you told me how old you were.
Right. There's a big difference between whether you're like 15 or 30. But you don't actually, it doesn't matter. Well, they say as a young adult. So there's somewhere between like 16 and 25.
Sure.
And no, but honestly, if your mother is being overprotective and you know she's going to hate the idea of you moving out like after the age of 18 and you feel like they have disdain for the idea of you moving out, you should absolutely be preparing to move out. So good on you for starting to think about it and for focusing on like building up your confidence in your own independence.
Yes, 100%. I mean, if you've been listening to our episodes, you must know what we were going to say about this. Alexis and I have consistently tried to make decisions in our lives where it's like you are better off the less dependent you are on your parents.
Yes.
In terms of your own individuation, in terms of your flexibility, your ability to make choices, certainly your ability to date people. Who they might not approve of. And that in the end, there is really no amount of comfort or financial support that is worth the curtailment of your own freedom and development.
Yeah. And in the long run, you'll end up having if you're going to have a good relationship with your parents as an adult, it will be better the less dependent on them you are.
Yeah, the overprotective thing, even though you don't sort of go into detail there, it concerns me a little bit because...
As does the disdain for the idea.
It's really impossible to have a relationship as an adult with your parents if they still think of you as a child. And the first step toward reconfiguring that relationship, and it's always a break, because you are destroying one way that they think of you in order to make room for another one's, and there's always a little bit of violence in that. But you do have to demonstrate to them that you're no longer a kid, and that means that you can't be, in their house under their protection all the time.
And in fact, something that I had to be told much later in life by a therapist is that actually good parenting involves creating space for your child to make that break from you, even though it's going to be painful for you both at points. Like a good parent actually lets you do that and gives you space to do that. And if your parents are trying to squish that down and like make you feel, super comfortable and close and like, you don't need to be on your own and it would be dumb to be on your own, that's actually bad parenting, it turns out.
Yeah, and you might find out some things about how tough this is and how, exactly how disdainful your parent will be by trying to move out and seeing what their reaction is. And, that might throw up some more red flags, which might make you realize that it really is time to move out.
Yeah. So let's actually get to the question about, building up your own confidence and, trying to, so one thing is start making friends or getting to know people who could be potential roommates or who could put you in touch with potential roommates, because you absolutely should be living with roommates when you're first moving out.
Yes. Shore up your social connections, get a job, obviously, if you can. Save money while you're living at home.
Right.
And, people make it through with less. If people who are kicked out of their houses, by really abusive parents and who don't have any life skills, they still manage to live. And it's painful and unpleasant, but it's like anything that you can do to cushion that landing will help you. And a lot of that is making sure that you have support, because we all need support. Even as adults, we all need support. But that support doesn't have to come from our families.
Yeah. And it should, the best way to survive as an adult is to have a strong but broad support network. That's people, again, join some sort of community, whether it's a hobby community, especially something that's a little tight-knit, but not too much, but isn't a cult. The SCA maybe, or local music stuff or whatever, but find community. Often actually, ideally, if you can find a community of people that's multi-generational, that's going to be a great way to get the kind of support you need for moving out and for living independently. Then you'll get people who can kind of mentor you through it a little bit. And, also that will be more people who are more likely to have a driver's license and can drive you to doctor's appointments.
If there are cool friends of the family who aren't immediately going to rat you out to your mom,
Yeah.
people like that, you never, yeah, that is my advice for that, is to quietly build up a network of support, and then when you have that, hit the road.
Yeah, and it is okay to miss it. Yes, that's actually, I think knowing that you're going to miss it it does not show immaturity. You're being self-reflective. So I think it sounds like you actually do understand. You have a pretty good idea of what's going on, and you understand the risks of stagnation. And so sort of fall back on some of that for your own confidence and your independence. Like, it sounds like you do actually understand that this is important. And so now get to know other people who've gone through this process and learn from them. Dear Wizards vs. Lesbians, my girlfriend and I mostly have a fantastic relationship. She's sharp and clever and an amazing cook. Even my aunts like her, which, believe me, is not a small accomplishment. Sometimes I say something and she looks at me like we come from different centuries, and, if I must be honest, vice versa. But mostly we're able to laugh about it. She saved my life and my sanity in so many ways. We met when I thought I was losing my mind and didn't even know who I was anymore. And then there she was, and suddenly everything felt real again. It was like she really saw me. Except I worry sometimes that she isn't actually seeing me. Her first love, who broke her heart so terribly, was, well, it's a bit of a crazy story to get into an advice column, but suffice it to say that she looked and sounded enough like me that she basically could have been my great-grandmother. My girlfriend has told me over and over again that I get her in a way her first love never did, and that she'd choose me every time if she were given the choice between us. But I still can't help wondering if I'm just a replacement for the girl she lost ages ago. Also, not sure if this is related at all, but I'm worried that I'm starting to lose it again because I keep seeing some of the same weird hallucinations I had back then in the movies I'm supposed to be reviewing for my job. Am I just totally losing it? At least this time I'm not mooning after a completely unobtainable ultra-Orthodox girl. That was bizarre. Thanks.
Thank you, Rainbow. You're a hero of mine. Thank you for writing in. So I have a serious answer to this, which is that if you are somebody who has struggled with a lot of, difficult relationships, crises, mental health issues in your life, if you generally have some issues with your self-esteem, put it that way, and you've had like difficult relationships with friends or family or partners in the past that have led you to second guess yourself, it can be hard to break that pattern even when you're with somebody who loves you unconditionally, and who really cares about you. And you do at some point have to just believe them when they say that they love you, for who you are.
Yeah.
And that they see the, whatever it is inside you, and that's fine with them, and might even be part of what attracts them to you. So, there is a leap of faith that you have to come to at some point in the process of really opening up and trusting to a partner who's going to be with you for the long term. Yeah. Which is of course difficult, but it is something that you have to do.
That said, the letter doesn't specify if somebody is telling you with their words and their actions that no, they do love you, they see you and they love you, believe them. If you do actually have to figure out, is this insecurity coming from internally, or are they doing things that aren't making me feel valued? Like, if she spends a lot of time talking about her first love and comparing you, or just doing things that really make you feel like she's comparing you and like you're not measuring up, that's different.
Yeah, when she said that she's saying it over and over, is that because you're asking her over and over, or is it just coming up a lot? I think there's a major difference between those two things. Right.
So, it is possible that this relationship ends up being a transitional one for both of you, where, she needed a relationship to get over her ex, and you needed a relationship sort of to get through your period of going insane. But, and so it may end up running its course. But if you both really do love each other, and it's just that you feel this insecurity, then, learn to hear her when she says that she really does love you and want you, not anyone else.
And if she does keep bringing up her ex, or and you would rather that she didn't, you can just ask her not to. And
right. Also that
it's reasonable for somebody to stop doing it at that point.
Yes. So, and the weird hallucinations thing with your movies, if other people are also seeing them in the movies, then that's fine. Then, that's just an unfortunate coincidence. If you're having like actual recurrence of your hallucinations, you may want to see a psychiatrist. You don't have to do what they say, but you should, and you can always get a second or even third opinion if you feel like they're not hearing you and they're being sketchy or trying to force you into medical decisions that don't feel right for you. But it's at least worth looking into.
Yes. So paranoia can verge into the clinical sometimes, particularly if it's being paired with hallucinations. So, just keep an eye on that, particularly if you've had manic episodes in the past, which it seems like you might have.
Yes.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
For the relationship advice section, hey, so I'm a foreign transfer student, and my roommate, who was assigned to show me around, has been really helpful while I've been having issues with administration and the school trying to kick me out. I think this is an AU of Mahit. Some paperwork I needed we didn't exactly obtain legally, and she could have been kicked out, so she really stuck her neck out for me. We've been kind of flirting, and I really like her, but she also won't stop referring to me with a racial slur. Should I still date her?
So yeah, is this I keep wondering if this is actually some character reference we're not getting, but it does sound like Mahit. I think if you tell her, you got to tell her to stop referring to you with a racial slur, and if she doesn't knock it off, then no, you should not actually date her.
No, that's. I really have nothing else to add to that.
I guess unless it's a turn on, in which case you can just do it in private.
Yes, but this is if we were to spin this out a little bit, boundaries in relationships. If you have a boundary, which is important to you, you do not have to justify it. Asking not to be called a racial slur is a real clear, supportable one. But, if there any kind of thing that is like not going to be a tremendous, a tremendous personal ask for your partner, like don't call me this, don't, refer to me in this way.
Anything that involves how you want to be treated, or more so like how you don't want to be treated, is right. Probably
like if your partner cannot follow a simple request like that, they're going to be willing to break down your autonomy in other ways, and that is a red flag even without the racial slur. So if you have a nickname that you don't want to be called, if you have anything like that, and your partner doesn't respect that, then that's a real bad sign.
Yeah. And maybe being dumped by you is the wake-up call they need. Or it won't be. It doesn't matter. They won't be your problem anymore. It's not your problem
after that point. Exactly. Alrighty.
All right, shall I do the next one?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, so there's this girl who grew up in the house next to me, and we absolutely fucking hated each other. I was hoping once we got out of school we'd never have to see one another. Yet, go figure, somehow we ended up at the same fucking job. I thought this would be a walking nightmare, and honestly, I wasn't wrong. This company sucks ass. But somehow, having to deal with shitting management constantly firing everyone brought us together. She said if we worked together, we wouldn't get fired. And not to brag, but the projects we worked on turned out really well. She was much nicer to me once we spent more time together that didn't involve trying to push each other down the high school stairs. It felt super bizarre we were friends, maybe even something more, but every time I had an opening to tell her how I felt, I chickened out. She told me about this other girl who works at corporate, and I decided to shelve my feelings. We'd be better as friends anyways. Anyways, this big promotion was coming up, and only one person could have it, so I did the nice thing and left. I found a new job so that she could have this promotion. She's literally talked about wanting to be in management her whole life in order to prove herself and maybe work her way up to corporate to be with that girl. But ever since I quit, she has been pretending she doesn't know me anytime we run into each other. We live in the same apartment complex, don't ask. She fucking hates me again, and I didn't realize it would make me more upset than when she hated me before. I don't know what advice I need, just feeling like the saddest girl in the universe.
Gideon?
I think this definitely, yeah, the saddest girl in the universe is kind of a giveaway.
Yeah.
So,
hello, Gideon. I think that you should just cut her out of your life. If first, and also you need to move out of that apartment complex if you possibly can. Like, I mean, I don't know what other, considerations there might be that you haven't mentioned in this letter, but like, this whole thing strikes me as so like gross and codependent that like just striking out on your own and doing something else with your life is probably your best bet. Or because if you keep sort of orbiting this black hole, you're going to end up impaled on a bit of railing or something.
Yes, I mean, you good smart thinking, quitting and taking a new job. It is, and it's possible that the reason why the girl is, pretending she doesn't know you is because she's hurt that, you quit without talking with her about it. And it's also possible that she gave herself a lobotomy, but doesn't matter. Not your problem. Go meet other people, make other friends, date other girls. And if and then maybe once you've both grown up a little bit, you can be friends again.
Yes, there's always the hope. There's absolutely always the hope. Don't spend your life like mooning after the first thing that came down the pike. Especially
when you hated each other for so long first.
Yes, exactly. All right. This one I think is not from a fictional person. As I've listened to your podcast, I've appreciated your grounded takes on life as neurodivergent people. If y'all are really doing advice, how much do you think it should affect someone's decisions if they know they burn out badly every couple of years? I want to move cross-country after visiting an online friend/person I've kissed there last year. I don't think we'll be together romantically long-term, and I'm not planning to live with them. But I do like the area, and I've been really feeling the lack of in-person queer connection in my life, since every couple of years of the past decade I've moved back in with my loving but religious and homophobic relatives to save on rent. When I have to lie down in a dim room for several months, again, I'm so sorry. I talked to my friend, and they say they'd love to have me around, although they don't want me to move just for them. Do you think it's worth it to try and live a gayer life across the country, even if I know it's only going to last until I once again get too tired to hold down a stable job?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%. Oh my God. Do not keep, because again, like move to wherever this place is that actually has a real gay community. You will make friends, and it's possible that you can go crash with them for 6 months while you have horrible migraines or whatever is going on.
Yeah, and it's like we've both have the kind of disabilities where we are rendered useless for shorter or longer periods of time.
Yes.
But the fallback position isn't always going to be there. Like even the sucky, homophobic fallback position isn't always going to be there.
Right.
You are eventually going to have to figure out how you're going to be able to live a life semi-independently while coping with your condition. And that is scary.
Yeah.
But it is also a thing that you have to reckon with. If you want it as an adult. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it. And you will be so much happier.
Yes.
I can guarantee you that much. You might be scared a lot of the time, but you will be so much happier. Your possibilities will expand. You will figure out how to do things potentially that you never even thought were possible for you within the circumscribed framework of what you're currently experiencing.
Right.
It may be that you don't become massively depressed and catatonic every once in a while when you're not in the situation that you're currently in,
Or, but the other thing is you might not be. It might be that your disability never goes away, and that is just going to suck. But it will suck way less if you're in a community where you have other friends who are disabled, and you can all sort of rely on each other.
Imagine that instead of having parents who, take care of you despite like you having to be in the closet with them, when you are unable to work for a while, you have a partner who's able to take care of you. Again, every card's on the table, part of the deal with the relationship, not a one-way thing, but still.
But not even just a partner. here, okay? Like,
or a group of friends.
When I finished my PhD and was too depressed to do anything with my life for quite a while, you know, I fell back on my network of friends, including one who let me stay with them, I think, longer than they were expecting, but they were remarkably nice about it. And, you know, and I stayed in their spare room and I got my life together. You can do that when you've built that network of friends. Make sure that where you're going, if the place where you're going is somewhere that is at least vaguely affordable, and has and is a Medicaid expansion state.
Yes, that with any luck.
Don't don't up and move to, you know, Atlanta's got a great queer scene. I don't actually, and I love Atlanta. I do not actually recommend moving there if you're a disabled person who may need to fall back on Medicaid every so often or all the time.
Yeah, but if your person lives in like Portland or another place where there's a semi-functional social safety net,
so anywhere in Massachusetts or New York State or Oregon or Washington or California.
Yes, I mean
Illinois.
You won't be able to afford to live in California, but other than that,
right.
So yes, no, absolutely, life's too short.
Right.
Out there.
Like worst case, I mean, you know, not worst case scenario, but even if everything just goes terribly and you crash and burn and do have to move in with your parents, at least you'll have gotten a chance to learn and grow as a person and have more interesting experiences.
Yep, 100%.
And, you know, and get to kiss somebody for a while.
Yeah.
Also, you know, so long as you can stay friends with this person after you're no longer romantically involved, that's great. You already know a person.
Yeah, that's a quality of life bonus right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we've got one last question here.
Which should I read it or should you?
Do you want me to read it?
Okay, fine. I'll read it. That's a little bit weird. Dear Wizards versus Lesbians, my fiance and I had our first date. Well, I knew it was a date. They didn't realize until later, discussing a specific Wiz-Les book. Recently, we realized that we'd both picked the same quote from that book to feature in our wedding vows. Should we both use the quote anyway? Should neither of us use it? Should we flip a coin at the chuppah to decide who gets to go first? Should I get dibs because I'm the one who wrote into their podcast to ask about it? Or should they get dibs because it's their podcast? Please help us resolve this critical issue, which is definitely a real issue and not simply an opportunity to brag about how cute we are. Love, my fiance Leora. Aww. Well, clearly you wrote into my podcast, and thus I get to decide. No, I think that we should have a rock paper scissors competition right there under the chuppah.
I think that would be very cute. Yeah,
So,
I agree with that. What? Can I ask what book this is? I want to
yes,
ask what the quote is.
It's a Desolation Called Peace, which was indeed what we discussed on our first date that Leora was intending for me to be a date, and for me it was like, oh cool, my internet friend wants to talk about this cool book we both just read.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think that it's in keeping with the general spirit of things that this be decided at the last moment.
Exactly. Lee very kindly offered. Lee was like, look, if you're both planning on quoting from Time War, you can each independently tell me what your quote is going to be, and then I'll tell you if it's the same as the other person's. But we were like, no, it's a different Wiz-Les book that we're both planning on quoting from.
Yeah. I mean, quote, I feel like quoting Time War at one's gay wedding is like playing the Book of Love if one is like a Gen Xer or something.
Yeah,
like
but you
that.
know what? To be honest, the classics are classics for a reason.
This is true.
I've been at a wedding that where the Book of Love was played by the bride's brother.
Live?
Oh yeah, right there. That was like his toast involved busting out a guitar and singing.
Acoustic guitar?
Oh yeah.
I swear to God, I have so much like built up shame about being the guy with the acoustic guitar on this podcast. I'm trying to accept and love myself.
No,
anyway.
you know what? You should absolutely look. In fact, you should be the guy with the acoustic guitar at our wedding too, mine and Leora's.
Oh my God, you are opening up a can of worms.
No, I know what I'm offering, and I'm offering it.
All right, let's discuss that offline.
Okay.
All right. So I think we actually have time.
Wow.
So what the heck is happening at the Hugos?
A sound that I normally only make when asked what the heck is happening at my synagogue.
Yes.
But what the heck is happening at the Hugos? Well, as you know, you may or may not know, the Hugos, the Worldcon was held in Chengdu, and
Yes.
and every year after the Hugos, or after the Hugo voting is concluded and the results have been announced, fairly soon after that, the committee releases all the statistics on the ballot so that you can see like who was winning the first ballot, who ended up winning, who was consistently getting a lot of second place. It's interesting for the stats nerds, and also can help spot when there's hijinks going on. In this case, there were several things that were removed because they were not eligible, and it's obvious why they're not eligible. And again, this happens every year, right? You nominate something and actually came out a year ago, or 3 years ago, but it was just recently published in a best of, and people think it came out this year. However, in this case, there were several things that were removed, and no reason was given. It was just said not eligible in both English and Chinese, and so people are like, not eligible, why? And tons of theories have sprung up. Probably many of them are true to one or another degree. Probably some of it was incompetence, and probably a lot of it was the committee proactively censoring themselves. As opposed, like, Ada Palmer actually wrote a very good thing about self-censorship, which I think is pretty accurate about, how most censorship, the government doesn't have to go in and redact things or tell you, no, you're not allowed to have this book up on your awards committee. Most of the time, the government just has to occasionally be really heavy-handed about it, and then you'll do all the work yourself.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a mess, and there's no easy way to solve it. I mean, personally, one of the many things I'm glad about in my career change is that I no longer have to care what the Chinese government thinks about anything I write.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things for me where it's disappointing, not because it happened, but because like one hopes that there are certain institutions that are by their nature a little more resilient, because of the principles upon which they are founded. And yes, you're making several noises of disgust in response to that.
Not disgust.
But you talk about me being radicalized by podcasts, but the thing is that I still have these weird little pockets of liberal naivete that burst in unexpected moments, and I'm filled anew with my disappointment and disillusionment about people's moral character. Aww. And
well, I mean, the real thing is, look, we like to think, that's the thing, is that we like to think that censorship, that everybody are reasonable people, and that because daily life in China isn't that different from daily life in America, or it is, but in ways that we can say, oh, this is just cultural differences. We like to sort of think that the experience of being in other countries is going to be fundamentally the same as ours. Part of that's, we like to think that, Chinese censorship just looks like American censorship, where there's a lot of lawsuits and screaming and, persecuting some teachers before somebody moves to another state. And, that's not actually how it works. And in China today, it's increasingly less how it works.
Yes.
But even 15 years ago, I had, friends I had a friend who went to college in Beijing about my age, so a while ago. And they said that there would just be days where they would be told by their professors, do not come to school tomorrow, because, it was often like any time, this is Beijing, so any time that there was an impending crackdown on anything Tiananmen related, and you're known to be just a somewhat independent minded kind of student, is a day that you should not be coming to school. So,
yes,
and again, it's gotten worse. It's gotten significantly worse since then.
And I want to say, it's possible that the organizers of Worldcon were naive enough not to realize this. That they were naive enough not to realize that they were about to, have their convention in a country which is currently involved in an act of genocide. That they were, that they didn't, know what this would entail. But I can't imagine being so naive, which makes me wonder why the decision was made to have the con there in the first place.
Oh, well, it was actually, it's because Chinese fandom banded together and put together a bid for Chengdu, which is, actually, it's kind of, it's reasonable. And I don't know. I
suppose it is, yeah.
I think probably it is better to have a convention to, I personally would not attend a convention in a country that's either dangerous or has a strong censorship regime. And, I was talking with somebody about this yesterday, and he was like, well, so doesn't that, conflict with the idea of having more diversity and accessibility around the world? And absolutely not. You could have your conference in Japan or South Korea or Taiwan.
Yeah. Taiwan's a great place to do it.
Yeah. And so it's just, anyway, the whole thing is stupid. And that isn't even what I wanted to rant about the Hugos.
Yes.
Which is I wanted to rant about the Hugos that Siren Queen got robbed by not getting a nomination because it was really good. And I read Legends and Lattes, and I was super disappointed because it wasn't even cute, cozy. I actually read a lot of cute, cozy, fluffy, mostly gay romances. And most of them, they know where they're aiming and they hit it squarely, or they don't. But, they're having fun. And I feel like I've also been reading some speculative fiction stuff that is part of this trend towards cozier things. Which again, I am not opposed to more cozy, fluffy things in principle, but I've been reading a bunch of them where there's this really obvious adherence to specific standards of what the millennial-ish, queer-ish, social justice-y generation says are their values. While the underlying values of the book are appalling. And
yes.
I don't mind reading books with appalling values or just with characters who have appalling values. I really enjoyed some These Burning Stars, and boy, one of the characters, that is awful. But that's what makes it so entertaining. I love Machineries of Empires so much, and all those people need to reread the Geneva Convention. But when books that are supposed to evoke this feeling of cozy happiness, in a world with no homophobia, and everybody talks, everybody uses the right language, and if somebody says something, uses the wrong pronoun or the wrong, or makes some assumptions about your imaginary fantasy race, they are corrected in exactly the right language, and they accept correction in exactly the right language. And then, they are also committing mass murder or colluding with organized crime or whatever, or just being assholes in their daily life. And it makes me feel like I'm part of one of those toxic communities that talks a big game about community, and what they mean is, don't you dare accuse the most charismatic person in the group of sexual assault, because we will shun you, because you're not upholding the standards of the community.
Yes, let's not turn the SF community into a share house, please. I don't want to see a chore wheel.
Well, the thing is that the SF community has been, as we established in the Marion Zimmer Bradley episode, has always been extremely toxic. That's That's fine.
That's nothing new.
I don't want
this
to.
This particularly new galling, Well, at every generation, the motherfuckers learn the right words to say.
Right,
that's part
exactly.
of being a charismatic abuser.
Yes, exactly. But no, it's just, and you know what? Also, fine. This is going to keep happening in person, but I don't want to read fiction that feels like the narrative voice of the book is doing that to me.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And so that is why I would much rather read Siren Queen, where, again, honestly, no one in that book has particularly good values, but who cares? It was beautifully written and fascinating and just an amazing book, and absolutely should have gotten nominated for the Hugos.
Yes. And we are, the next time we record, we're going to be recording about The Saint of Bright Doors, which should win the every award next year.
I would be shocked if that thing doesn't win a Nebula.
And yes, but it is almost kind of in response to that, given the way that it uses some kind of language. And
yes. That's true. That's true. This will be a great lead-in for that discussion. Yeah, that is absolutely a book that I will be furious if it doesn't get at least nominated for all the major awards.
Exactamundo. All right. Well, I think we actually managed to do everything that we set out to accomplish.
Wow, within an hour.
Yes. Thank you so much for sending in both your fictional and real questions. Take our advice with a grain of salt.
Yes.
When I give advice to people, I always say that the basis upon which I give advice is that I have made every one of these mistakes and have paid for them in blood. And that's where I'm coming from.
But for those of you who seriously asked for advice, thank you for trusting us with your problems. And for those of you who sent in entertaining questions about your various fictional characters, thank you for doing that, because that was also really fun.
Indeed. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.